At a newborn baby's baptism, a noble girl points to the baby boy and chooses him as her future husband. Her mother hears this and immediately points out the truth.
When he reaches marrying age, you will be old and worn.
The girl says nothing, but her eyes burn with a certainty that seems to reach across time. It is as if she has already seen the shape of her own fate. In 1560, she was born into one of the most powerful and wealthy families in Hungary. The blood of one of Hungary's oldest noble lines ran through her veins. After centuries of accumulating wealth, her family owned vast land and fortune, at one point even surpassing the king himself. But Elizabeth had no power over her own life. From the moment she was born, she was promised to the son of a powerful general from an equally noble family. Her mother would often drag her to the window and force her to watch the executioner's axe rise and fall. Her mother often told her that only by stepping over the bones of the lowly could one ever reach the stars of power. Under this twisted kind of upbringing, a sick indifference toward human life began to grow wildly inside her. Deep in her bones, she believed that killing a commoner required no punishment at all. When her father's coffin was placed in the family hall, she shed no tears. She simply bent down and carefully studied the final expression frozen on his face. In that moment, the mystery of life, aging, sickness, and death took root inside her heart. She buried a living chick in the soil, fully expecting to grow a new one from the earth. But when she dug it up again, what came out was not a new chick, but a mass of horrifying worms. She turned to the priest for answers.
But if we bury them alive?
They suffocate and die. Body melts away, but the soul passes on to heaven or hell.
If it was not, I would have to raise an army to conquer death.
From that moment on, her obsession with conquering death burned inside her like a flame that would never go out. Time passed. At the age of 12, a forbidden love bloomed as brilliantly as a summer flower. Elizabeth fell in love with a male servant, but in her mother's eyes, this love that crossed class lines was a serious insult to noble blood. She begged desperately, but all she received in return was the reality of her lover's execution. Her mother once again pressed her in front of that window soaked in bloody memories. She forced Elizabeth to witness her lover's death with her own eyes. That head, still warm with life, still held a look of love as it gazed toward her. Not long after, she gave birth to a baby boy. Before the blood on the birthing bed had even dried, the newborn child was taken away from her as he cried. At the age of 15, under her mother's control, she married Ferenc, the son of a powerful general. She wore a crown set with 100 diamonds. This political marriage seemed to place the final jewel into the crown of power, but no one knew that crown had already been soaked in blood and tears. After her mother died, a cold and noble countess was truly born. She and Ferenc had 3 children together. Elizabeth was decisive and ruthless, and with her remarkable talent for finance, countless nobles, and even the king, became indebted to her. Meanwhile, Ferenc led his army across Hungary, slaughtering and enslaving without restraint. Nearly half the population became victims beneath their iron hooves. With mountains of wealth and absolute power in her hands, Elizabeth sat on a throne built from blood and enjoyed the glory of being above everyone else. Yet in the dull routine of married life, she also felt an endless emptiness. So she opened a hospital dedicated to treating the poor. But rumors soon began to spread. People claimed that many patients had died mysteriously inside. Later, this powerful couple used their military strength and extraordinary intelligence to engrave their family crest deep into the highest levels of the kingdom's power. But no life can stay smooth forever. The danger of becoming too powerful for the crown quietly began to approach. After one meeting, the king presented Ferenc with a golden cup. But hidden inside that seemingly flawless golden cup was a deadly trap. That night, after drinking from it, Ferenc suddenly felt ill. Before dawn arrived, Elizabeth watched as her husband left this world with a twisted expression on his face. Facing her husband's sudden death, Elizabeth did not shed a single tear. As she watched flies circling the corpse, she knew this was not simple at all. In that moment, the desire to conquer death reignited in her heart like wildfire. After the funeral, Elizabeth decisively sent her children away to a safer place. She sharply sensed the hungry eyes surrounding her. To secure her power, she personally pledged loyalty to the king and promised to fully assist him against outside enemies. Everyone was watching this wealthy widow like prey. One old count even took the initiative to propose marriage. Elizabeth dismissed him with contempt, still holding her head high.
You're a count by marriage, whereas nobility has been in my blood for centuries.
She rejected this marriage of impure blood without the slightest hesitation. But at the ball, when Elizabeth's eyes fell on the old count's 21-year-old son, Istvan, everything changed. The moment their eyes met, It was as if electricity passed between them. She could not wait to ask about Istvan's background. Only then did she discover, to her surprise, that 21 years earlier, she had once chosen Istvan as her future husband. Looking at this young and handsome man before her, Elizabeth's eyes flashed with burning desire. Aside from death, she believed she had the right to conquer everything in the world, so she made the first move.
What have you heard about me?
That everyone respects and fears you.
Do I inspire fear in you?
Not at all. So very honored to meet you.
And are you?
Istvan was also drawn to this cold yet beautiful face. He invited Elizabeth to dance. As the music moved, their eyes tangled together, as if the very air had stopped. Her nobility and mystery soon made Istvan fall completely. Elizabeth pressed her advantage and invited Istvan to kiss her in front of everyone. After a moment of hesitation, Istvan responded with passion. Elizabeth stripped away all her defenses and disguises, becoming once again a gentle, seductive, shy, and captivating young woman. On the carriage ride home, the inexperienced Istvan was so nervous that his hands trembled as he spoke. Elizabeth had always been surrounded by calculating people. Faced with someone as innocent as Istvan, she could barely control herself. But the next day, Elizabeth had to leave. She asked Istvan to stay. That night, they did not sleep. The next morning, she gently stroked the young man's firm back, feeling the life pulsing beneath his warm skin. But her hands, already covered in fine lines, formed a painful contrast with Istvan's smooth skin. Just then, Istvan woke up. Before they parted, he left her a necklace as a token of love and promised to write to her every day. Back in the carriage, Elizabeth was still savoring the warmth of Istvan's body. After tasting the sweetness and freedom of love again, Elizabeth also developed a fear of her aging face unlike anything she had ever felt before. Once she returned home, she immediately began caring for her skin. Her personal maid tried to warn her. Hearing that the two of them were almost 20 years apart, the maid became even more convinced that love had clouded Elizabeth's judgment.
Keep him as a lover if you wish, but do not forget your rank. He's 21 while you're soon to be 39.
He's very mature for his age.
Of course he is. Elizabeth, young people change their mind all the time. He can have any woman.
Those words stabbed straight into Elizabeth's heart. Yet every time the two met, Elizabeth lost herself more deeply and became harder to control. At the same time, she kept sinking into endless self-doubt and self-hatred. Looking into the mirror, she despised her aging face, so she went to the church and prayed devoutly, begging God to protect her love. Every day, she stood in the castle, waiting eagerly for Istvan's letters. But one day, the letters suddenly stopped. She grew restless and anxious, drifting through each day in a daze, until 1 week later, Istvan arrived in the night and promised to take Elizabeth away with him. She agreed without hesitation. She was willing to give up all her wealth and status, just to spend her life with the man she loved. But when the appointed time came, Istvan never appeared. As it turned out, their romance had quickly spread across the country. Istvan's plan to elope had been discovered by his father. The old count imprisoned his son and kept spreading lies, claiming that Elizabeth's lover had been poisoned. He said Elizabeth was only playing with his son's feelings. He also emphasized that their bloodlines were far too different. Elizabeth had once told him herself that she would never marry someone of impure blood. Under his father's daily manipulation, Istvan slowly began to waver. In the end, heartbroken and defeated, he married the noblewoman his family had arranged for him, but Elizabeth was still waiting for him in agony. One day, while she was riding through the grasslands to clear her mind, an old woman suddenly blocked her path.
You old witch! Your repulsive look scared my horse!
Powerful now, but soon you will look like me.
Those words completely enraged Elizabeth. She raised her whip, ready to kill the old woman. In that instant, the darkness inside her was fully awakened. After returning home, she changed into a white dress that made her look younger and began praying helplessly to keep Istvan's love forever. She cut open the soft flesh of her chest and sewed his hair inside. After that, she stopped eating and spent every day lying in bed, lost in grief, until one night, the old count sent her a breakup letter in Istvan's name. The letter mentioned that Istvan's wife was only 17. Just hearing that age was enough to plunge Elizabeth into despair. The letter said that during those beautiful nights, Istvan had never seen her as a lover, but as a mother, so she blamed the breakup entirely on her own aging. Early the next morning, a maid accidentally broke a strand of her hair while combing it. Elizabeth instantly became like a wild beast, grabbing the comb and smashing it into the maid. Blood splashed onto her face. Under the sunlight, the light on her face suddenly became soft. In that moment, a miracle seemed to happen. In her eyes, the wrinkles on her face began to fade, and her skin became as smooth as a young girl's. Elizabeth was ecstatic. This accidental discovery completely opened the Pandora's box inside her heart. She ordered the servants to take care of the young girl. She ordered every maid to carefully examine whether her wrinkles had changed. The maids leaned in close, but none of them dared tell the truth, so they could only keep flattering her. Elizabeth accepted the courtship of Duke Dominic. Dominic coveted her wealth and status, and often flattered her by saying she looked younger and more beautiful than before. This made Elizabeth even more convinced that the blood of young girls was the secret to preserving youth and conquering death. At first, she only wiped it across her face, then used blood to wash her hands and bathe. She forced the maid's wound to stay open. Whenever it scabbed over, she cruelly tore it open again, but every wound eventually heals. The servants used knives to cut the maid's arm again and again, draining her blood once more. The young girl eventually died from losing too much blood, but Elizabeth's desire only grew stronger. To satisfy her insane pursuit of beauty and youth, she needed more and more blood. Her violence escalated. From hurting the maids around her, she began reaching her claws toward more innocent girls. Her loyal maid warned her not to continue, but no one can wake someone who is pretending to sleep. The maid's words had no effect at all and only enraged Elizabeth further. To satisfy her desires, Elizabeth even built a sinister mechanical device and hid it deep in the cellar. Every turn of the gears was accompanied by the cries and despair of young girls. The number of murdered girls reached into the hundreds. Their bodies piled up like mountains and could only be dumped in the wilderness, left for wild beasts to devour. The villagers told the priest about Elizabeth, hoping he could persuade the king to investigate at once. But just after the letter was sent, Count Dominic discovered it. They killed the priest to silence him. Dominic intercepted the letter. To protect himself, he left Elizabeth overnight. Meanwhile, the righteous maid drank poison, using her own death to beg Elizabeth to stop everything. Madness always comes at a price. Elizabeth's body began to develop terrifying rashes, but she still refused to repent. When the blood of ordinary maids no longer worked, she absurdly believed their blood was not pure enough, so she turned her claws toward even younger girls. One day later, the servants brought a girl to her. As Elizabeth looked at her, she vaguely remembered that years ago, she had once given this girl the ribbon in her hair.
Countess, you shouldn't be out here. It's so cold.
I'm waiting for a letter.
Must be a very important letter.
Very.
What a beautiful dress.
What's your name?
Pola.
Here. Take it.
In that moment, reason seemed to win over desire.
Pola, run away. Run, leave this castle. Run, or we'll kill you, or we'll eat you alive!
The girl was terrified and turned to run. The maid chased after her. In the end, she still met a terrible fate. Later, Elizabeth simply turned her attention to noble daughters, but fate played a cruel joke on her, because the girl captured this time was the wife of her former lover, Istvan. She had already heard the rumors among the people, rumors about a shameless widow who had fallen in love with her husband, and she had willingly walked into the trap.
Could you possibly be Urshabet?
The judgment of fate finally arrived. After hundreds of murders happened around the castle, the king finally decided to launch an investigation. He coveted Elizabeth's enormous fortune and sent Istvan to gather evidence. When Elizabeth saw the figure of her former lover from afar, all the resentment in her heart instantly disappeared. She carefully changed into a white dress. This was the first time they had seen each other in 3 years. When they learned that the letters they had written to each other had been intercepted, they looked at one another with tenderness, their eyes full of regret and longing. But after their moment of warmth, Istvan got up to search the place of evil beneath the castle. Elizabeth lay in bed, listening to the noise he made below, a sad smile appearing at the corner of her mouth. Istvan and his companion argued at the door because of her. At first, Istvan refused to believe that the woman he once loved could be the killer of more than 600 girls, but in the face of undeniable evidence, he had no choice but to accept the brutal truth. The next day, Elizabeth stood coldly by the window. Behind her were the guards who had come to arrest her. She did not resist, and still held her head high, showing the pride of a noble until the end. In the end, she was sentenced to spend the rest of her life imprisoned on an island for the murder of 650 young girls. The servants who took part in the atrocities were all beheaded in public. On the day of the execution, she saw Istvan and his father again after so long. By then, They had become the most powerful ministers in the kingdom. Elizabeth's face showed no emotion. She did not cry, and she did not rage. She only looked deeply at Istvan once, then proudly stepped into eternal darkness. She stood in her cell as the light slowly disappeared. She remained silent to the end, guarding the last dignity of a noblewoman.
Man has created God in his image, which gives him dominance over everything else. Birds, lions, trees, and women. I wish I had been born a man. I would have killed thousands in battle, taken over countries, burned witches. I would have been a hero.
As the last rays of sunlight faded, Elizabeth bit into a vein on her arm and left this world forever. The Countess tells the legend of Elizabeth Bathory, a Hungarian noblewoman from the 17th century. Born into a powerful family, she became infamous for her cruelty. According to legend, she killed many young girls and bathed in their blood to preserve her youth. Julie Delpy wrote, directed, and starred in the film, weaving history together with legend. Some say Elizabeth was an evil witch, while others say she was a bloodthirsty murderer. But is that really the truth? The king no longer had to repay his enormous debt. The old count's family took her place and rose to the peak of power. In the film, Istvan narrates the story from his own perspective. Most of the story about Elizabeth Bathory comes from rumors. History has always been written by the winners, while the truth has long been sealed away in the corners of time. The so-called madness of the Countess may be nothing more than an excuse used by a patriarchal society to justify its own violence. Those sacrificed young girls were victims, but they were also mirrors reflecting the absurdity of power. No one truly remembered their names, yet the rumors about the abuser were carved into history. People condemned her for murder and for making a pact with the devil, even though many of those accusations were completely fabricated. In the eyes of some, she died because of her obsession with love. In the end, her story becomes nothing more than a heartbreaking warning. Even the most intelligent woman can lose all her wisdom inside the maze of love. When she gazed at the newborn baby as a young girl and said, "I want him to be my husband," it was not a childish fantasy. It was a faint desire to choose her own destiny. Her forbidden love with a servant across class lines was the first time she embraced love through her own will. After marriage, she used her gift for finance to control wealth. She fused her husband's military power with her own intelligence and forged a family empire. By then, she was no longer an accessory to men, but a player standing before the chessboard of power. All of this was Elizabeth's instinctive pursuit of freedom and dignity. When society tried to discipline rebellion with chastity and obedience, she answered in the most extreme way. "I can devour your purity and use your fear to rewrite the rules of the game."